Hey y'all, it's your girl Ivy. Today I get to sit down with my friend Dorothy, a former First Lady who is now dating at the fabulous age of 60. Today she's going to spill the tea on what it means to be unequally yoked, even with Christian men. So whether you're single, dating, or married, stay tuned.
Am I the only one struggling with the temptation? This relationship is testimony.
Why is communicating with my wife so difficult?
So tough.
Yeah, I'm so done in relationships.
I guess I'm just a single family.
Why can't God just send me a man?
But how do I know if God wants me to marry?
Why did I get married to have my family broken up?
I don't know if she even loves me.
Are you struggling to find answers on faith and relationships? Join me as I sit down with everyday women and men who are sharing their stories about navigating the complexities of God, sex, and relationships. I'm Ivy G. Lee Snowman, and this is Yoked by Love. Hi, Dorothy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm super happy to have you here because you have been one of my spiritual mothers. And so sitting down with you to get these nuggets of wisdom is like super, super important to me. So I wanted to start, when you're looking for a partner as a Christian woman, you want to be with a Christian man. And you think if you find a Christian man, everything else is going to fall into place. But your experience is not necessarily the case when we talk about living happily ever after. So I just wanted to sit down with you and understand, how are you married to a pastor as a first lady for how many years?
35.
35 years, and made the decision that this was not a marriage where you were spiritually aligned.
Well, it's really interesting because when we began, I really looked to him for guidance and wisdom when it came to my spiritual growth because he was my pastor. And that made sense. And when he was going through seminary, I really was learning with him. We were really learning the history of Christian life and the Bible. And so we were growing together. We really were. And it was really good. But there came a time when I broke away and began to grow on my own. And that's when the alignment shifted. And I don't really believe that he was willing to come back together.
Yeah. And so what did that look like when you say the alignment shifted?
Well, for me, I really need spiritual disciplines. So I need to sing, I need to pray, I need to read the Bible, and I need devotion every day. I need to really be feeding my spirit every day. Whereas he's a pastor, and just like a doctor doesn't want to come home and work on folk, I don't think that, some pastors want to come home and do that either.
Can you share how you all got together and how you became a first lady, a pastor's wife?
Well, we met on the dance floor of the Riverview Supper Club in Minneapolis, and he was a senior in college and I was a junior. And that's how we met. But we never went to another club, which was very interesting. And he said that he knew I was his wife when he met me. Wow. And I believe it.
Were you elated, or did you feel some comfort in knowing that you were with a man that knew the word, knew God? Was that something that you were seeking when you got married? Or is that something that you understood that you needed along the journey of being married?
I was really young. In terms of my Christian walk with God when I met Thomas, and he was too. And so I knew I wanted a man who had virtue and who had values and who had character. I don't necessarily think I was looking for a Christian man.
Yeah. Because some women just if I can just get that, then everything else will fall in place. Mm-hmm. And what do you say to that?
I think that we continue to evolve. And I think in my marriage, I continued to evolve spiritually, and Thomas was really comfortable where he was. And I didn't see anything wrong with him making that decision, except that I was there waiting for him to evolve with me.
What is the patience process with waiting for someone to be aligned, to be yoked with you spiritually, where you all are demonstrating the same behaviors and are practicing the walk and lifestyle the same? How much do you give, and at what point are you this guy may not be evolving. He may just be stagnant, and I'm evolving and how much patience and grace do you give? I mean, you were in a marriage for 35 years. You know, I've only been married for 6 years, and I can tell you there have been points of alignment, and there have been points where we haven't aligned. Talk a little bit about what you would tell a young woman who's like trying to get her man on the same page as her spiritually. Like, what's that? How do you maneuver that?
Well, I think that the number one thing for all of us is to be true to God and true to yourself. And believe that if you are to be aligned, that God will be in that process. But you can't drag anybody into alignment. I believe in vibrations. I believe that, to be spiritually aligned, you need to know who you are. You really need to know spirit. Spirit knows spirit. And I don't think that Thomas and our spirits were necessarily unaligned at first. I think we were aligned, as a matter of fact. But he wasn't willing to accept the fact that I evolved and he needed to move too. I think that a lot of people get to a plateau in their relationship with God and we're like, oh, we good. Me and God, we're good. And not grow, and you don't take the time to groom yourself to a higher level with God.
Yeah. And I think definitely even outside of, being a pastor, people are, they're in this space where it's, because I know God and because God and I communicate, that is the level of depth that I need to go. And the disciplines don't necessarily apply to them. Or they don't want to do the things that they may consider to be extreme, like pray every day or fast. Or so I can see how that would erode a relationship if that's what you needed moving forward.
I think that's what all relationships need,
Yeah.
is to continue to groom them and to grow in them and not get comfortable. People think that if I go to church, I'm good with God. But God, just like in the Bible, it says you're still on milk. It would be different, and we look at it and say, well, if you were doing that in real life, like you never ate meat, you just wanted a bottle all the time. And we do that as Christians. We're like, okay, I know God. I read the Bible every now and then. I go to church. I'm good. But God wants our whole self.
Right.
He really does. And the only way to do that is to continue to commune with him in the spiritual disciplines.
You have spent many years mentoring young women. I know that's one of your passions. You're in the public school system in Minnesota. You did it when you were here in Connecticut through various groups. You work with young women. You even have a daughter who's no longer a young adult. She's kind of a full-grown adult now.
Exactly.
But, we come to you often with a desire to learn and get some advice. What do you think are the warning signs of being unequally yoked when you're already in a relationship?
I would say, as crazy as it seems, is this going back to the communication piece. How are you communicating or not communicating? I mean, alignment comes with how are you feeling me? How are you speaking to me? How much time we're spending together? Are we enjoying that time together? Do we have things that we enjoy doing together? I mean, if you're not aligned, then you spend more time apart than you do together. And you enjoy not being with them, or you don't enjoy it, but you don't say anything because we value longevity as opposed to quality of a relationship. And so I would say, do you enjoy being with that person? Are you growing together? Are you learning together? Are you learning anything new together, taking classes, doing something? You understand? What I'm saying is, I just believe in order to be aligned, you have to be moving, first of all, and you have to be moving in the same direction.
Yeah.
And there has to be vision there. I think a lot of relationships lack vision.
Yeah. Let's go back to longevity versus, what did you say?
Quality.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think we value longevity over quality? Is it because we've been taught to suffer relationships, suffer marriage as women?
I don't think so. I think that we value longevity because it's something to be celebrated. I mean, we look forward to, celebrate, whether what's behind the scenes is really bad. People still will come together and celebrate. I've been together for 5 years. Let's celebrate, knowing all the time there's just great pain there. And so I think that I want to know, I used to say this to my friends and they thought it was funny, but I don't think it's funny. I think that just like a license, you need to renew your marriage license.
Yes.
If we had to renew our marriage license, we would be different. But because you get in and you get comfortable and people just take one another for granted, I think that we need to renew not just our vows, but our marriage license.
Yes.
Like, are you licensed to do this thing?
My mother says marriage should be like a credit card. It should have an expiration date with the option to renew.
I think so.
And I think that's deep, and it's deep hearing it from a Christian woman.
Absolutely.
It's deep hearing it from Christian women for sure. Yeah.
I mean, I think that we might want to revolutionize marriage, even as Christians, because this is the thing that I think that is important. Women hold one another accountable. Men do not. Not as they should. I think there are circles and communities where people are like, dude, you need to get it together.
Right.
It's not often because they're not sharing like women are sharing.
Right.
I know that my friends have said to me in my marriage and in my relationships, no, you're absolutely wrong on that point. And I think you need to apologize. But I found with my marriage, even when I would call my husband's advisors and say, look, I think you need to talk with him. And they would, but he could opt out.
Yeah.
I don't think women let women opt out.
Right. They don't. We're hard on each other because we want to see our friends, our girlfriends thrive, and we want to see them happy. And we know that sometimes holding those things in just aren't, you have to be there for your friends, and just the truth is the truth.
Yeah.
So I want to circle back to one of the things that you said related to a pastor's work is like a doctor's work. Once they get home, they don't necessarily want to continue to perform that work, right? So how did you feel in that space knowing that your man had just given himself spiritually, to the congregation, to the people, and then come home and not have that for your relationship and for you?
I felt neglected because I know how gifted he is and I wanted some of those gifts. It's similar to your husband being a singer and he's on the road and, he's in concert, but when he comes home, he doesn't sing to you and you love his voice. Yeah. And that's how I felt about Thomas, is that I loved his voice and I loved what he had to give, but he felt exhausted and drained, and so he really was, looking for me to give to him, which I did, but then I needed us to walk the road together. And our ways of worshiping and practicing spiritual disciplines together were not the same. What I needed, to read the Bible together, to do devotions, that's just not the way that he experiences his spiritual life.
Right. And nothing's wrong with how he was experiencing, or like a lot of people, there's nothing wrong with how they're experiencing it. It's that together, you're not doing it together.
Yeah.
So it's not a judgment call, right? Nope. It's just, we can't seem to get lock in step with how we worship God, with how we serve God, with how we praise God. And
or align spiritually. I don't think I asked him the questions, to be fair to him. Like, what would work for you? I just said, I want to pray together. I want to read the Bible together. I want to do devotionals. But that wasn't natural for him, and it didn't feel right for him.
Right.
It felt right for me. And because I didn't see him practicing in the way that I needed, I just thought, well,
Is spirituality in partnership the highest level of intimacy for you?
In partnership? No. I mean, all of those things. I mean, worshiping in the collective and in the communal space is high. I enjoyed him as a preacher and a pastor, and so that got me high. Yeah. To see him and his influence spiritually on other people. And so aligning at home was just a different level.
Yeah.
It was just something that I needed. I really, really needed that from him. And I don't think that he didn't want to give it. It just wasn't the way in which he worshiped.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm for me, I asked the question because personally, if our spiritual vibrations aren't on the same frequency, everything else that we do intimately for me is like a little less. It's not as exciting. It's not as like, I'm questioning it. You know what I mean? But when I know like we are together in God in those spaces and moments, I can do everything else that's under the banner of intimacy. So we talk about like neglect, and we talk about hurting and being sad in marriage. Did that ultimately work out in your favor, though, in the sense of strengthening your relationship with God? Would you have leaned on God as hard as you leaned on Him if, say, you were in this perfectly yoked marriage? Yeah.
I think ultimately what I tell everyone and what I believe is eventually God's going to have His way. So if He wanted me to love Him more and evolve more spiritually, it was going to happen anyway. It doesn't have to be an either or. I just think that I needed to know God and grow in God for myself, build my own faith, and not depend on Thomas.
Do you think if you would have done less depending on Him when you were in your younger years, that you may have not have needed as much spiritual partnership and in syncness? That's a word?
No, I definitely think that we were aligned at the very beginning, and that I needed that to be consistent.
Yeah. Because I'm struggling with, like, I love me. When me and God together, it's just amazing. It's like, right? And I love my husband so much. I want him to be in that space with me. But, like, how much does God really require us to be in that space? And, like, I've been searching the Bible trying to find where does God really talk about intimacy with husband and wife in this, like, trifecta of God, husband, and wife. And I'm really not seeing it. I think it's a very contemporary Christian theme. And not to say, like, it's okay to be unequally yoked, but there's something about just that worship and praise with God, that intimacy with God. And I've always, prior to being married, desired my highest intimacy to be with my husband and God. Mm-hmm. And, like, God is kind of maybe telling me right now, like, nah, like, I got him. I'm working on him over here. I need you over here. And I'm trying to just get into that space of discernment where it's like, okay, I'm going to let him do what he does with God, how he does with God. And I'm going to be over here. And that's not, and I'm going to intentionally choose not to be frustrated or in the way. Like, trusting God that's like, okay, God, if you got me, then I have to trust that you have him. And that if you got both of us, then you have us together. But I think that's hard to do when I really just want to pray with my husband every morning on our knees, and we cry and we hug and kiss and make love, and then we pray again.
But I think that we watch too much television and that we're looking for these idyllic relationships. Yeah. And so I think that really, I think if you work on yourself, God will work on them. And that's, we have to trust that. Yeah. I really do believe that.
And is it safe to say, like, the reason why you chose to end your marriage isn't just solely spiritual? There were other things. You don't have to get into those things if they're personal, but we're not saying, just because you're unequally yoked, putting that message out there to women or men that, like, that is cause to break off your marriage. Like, that's something that should be worked on. There were other things, right?
Absolutely. And again, I do believe that God can put you on the right track. I think that you can be aligned. If you were aligned, I think that God can bring you the alignment back together. Yeah. But there are, it's such a dynamic relationship. You've got kids, you've got jobs, you've got community work, you've got the church. All of those things, I don't think they're ever all going to be aligned, but you need to at least be working on them. Right. Working on yourself first and then working on them together. And we just weren't. Yeah. We just weren't. Period. I had my life. He had his life. We did parent well together. Mm-hmm. We did a lot of things well together. Yeah. I mean, we're both community activists, and we like a lot of the things. But again, that intimate time with one another and God was not there.
I think one of the things that's super dope is that you kind of had an exit strategy, and he knew that this was coming, and you had a date. It was like, I'm going to raise these kids, and the moment the last one is out of the house, I'm going to depart. And so, like, he had time to make adjustments if he needed. You didn't just, like, ghost him when your son graduated, your last child graduated. But you knew that this was coming, and he knew that this was coming, mm-hmm. right? Walk us through that process, because I think that's a lesson learned. I think that's something that a lot of women can hear.
Even though our marriage was falling apart, our relationship wasn't. You know, our friendship wasn't. Our parenting wasn't. My husband did not, and today does not want to be divorced from me. Period. He believes that I was everything that he wanted and that God brought me to him. But the problem was he didn't feel the responsibility to keep it together. Because I didn't believe in divorce, he didn't believe I would ever leave. So even though I said, you know, once my son is graduated, I'm done. I'm gone. We've done our job. And I never wanted to be a single parent, and I thought that my children deserved two parents. I wasn't miserable in my relationship with my husband. I wasn't. But I knew that there was more for me to gain from going than leaving. You know, it was more for me. I would gain more and be my fullest self and my most authentic self if I left.
Yeah. And
it was hard. I tell people, just because I didn't fall apart, I didn't have a nervous breakdown, because it was gradual, it doesn't mean that it didn't hurt. People didn't see me suffering, so they thought it was easy. It was not easy.
Yeah. And you, I mean, just talk about where you were. You were a stay-at-home mom for the duration of your children's adolescent years. So when you left the city, you left with no job, you left with no big resume to go find a new job in the new city that you were going in. I mean, you took a strong leap of faith that I think a lot of women would be intimidated to do, because they would feel like, well, I don't have what it takes to leave, so I'm just going to stay and not be my best self.
Well, and I wasn't even though I was a stay-at-home mom, I also was consulting. I was doing social justice work. I was doing, youth development work. So I was always working, but just not a 9-to-5. And so I did have things that I was confident that were transferable when I left, you know. And then I had a reputation for being a great facilitator and all of those things. So I was, but I was importantly, I was confident that God was going with me, and that I was going to a community that would embrace me when I got there, which was back home to Minnesota.
Amen. All right, so let's fast forward. Divorce happens. How long are you from being divorced? Like, where are we at? A year and a half, 2 years? Or since you left the house?
I left 8 years ago.
Okay.
Divorce was final in October.
When did you start dating? When did you decide you were going to get back in the game?
I was seeing other people, even when I wasn't divorced. Let me be clear and honest.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
I was seeing people because in my heart, I felt like our bond was broken. When I left, I left. And I begged my husband for a divorce. And every time he was like, nope. And so I felt like I had already severed the tie. And all the time over those 8 years that I was gone, I was untying the ties that bound us together.
And I was not going to ask you about this, but if you so eloquently stated repeatedly that you are leaving, that you're gone, those ties are untied, but you're still married, do you believe that's infidelity?
Absolutely.
You do?
I absolutely do. Because
Speak on that, because that's a dualism.
Yeah, but you know what? I had to be true to me. And I needed comfort. I needed companionship. I needed, to be with people. I have 5 brothers. So I love male conversation, and so it wasn't just about intimacy. No. It was really, but it's emotional infidelity.
Right. So you started to date. Let's get to after the divorce happened, because it might be a little messy discussing what happened.
It's just fine. The world and life is messy.
Okay. How are you deciding who you want to date?
I didn't. The guy that I was seeing intermittently, I had known him for 30 years, so I trusted him. Okay. And so,
trust?
That was absolute trust. And because I knew that he didn't need to be out front and in public with me.
Okay.
So we were just friends. So that's what happened when I came to Minnesota, and after I'd been there for years, seeing someone who I could go to the movies with, or, spend time with and have male conversation with, and who I trusted to keep what I needed to be under wraps.
So privacy.
Yep. So privacy was really critical.
I want to get to not just that relationship, but like as you meet men now, what has changed in your sort of list of standards spiritually that weren't there before, that have come along now as you've evolved and know what you need and want spiritually? And how is that aligned with God?
Well, first of all, I am dating, but I didn't go on apps, and I was determined not to do that. I just didn't feel led to do that. And so the guy that I'm dating now and have been for a year, we met through a mutual person. His aunt is my godmother, and I had never met him before because he lives in a different state. And so I think I was depending on God. And even when we were meeting and we were clear that we were just supposed to be friends, because I had not been divorced when I met him. I was not divorced. He said, "We're not waiting on your husband. We're waiting on God."
Okay, but that's him dictating the rules. I want to know what's on your standard list.
So my standard was honesty.
Okay, honesty. Why is honesty important?
Because we lie. People lie to get what they want. And I just need the man that I'm going to be with to be honest about what you want, what you need. And so honesty is way up there. But then being a man of God, determined to practice the spiritual disciplines that I love. I love reading the Bible. Yeah. I love doing devotions every day. I love exchanging how we're feeling about our relationship with God. I love singing, even though I can't sing. This is how I know a man loves me, is because he lets me sing and he enjoys it.
Oh,
and that's always happened, believe it or not, because they know it's coming from my heart. It's not my vocals that is impressing upon what, it's me singing and enjoying it. He gets joy
from your worship.
Yeah.
I want to go back to honesty, because I was just having this conversation the other day. A lot of, and I'm sure the case is true with women, but I can only speak because I've been with men and only men. A lot of men are dishonest initially to win you. They're dishonest about who they are spiritually. They take your zeal for God and superimpose it on them to get through the dating. But then when, the doors are shut, when it's time to get engaged or when it's time to commit or you are committed, you just see like it's not all there. Mm-hmm. They want to go to church with you and they do all the things to appease you. And they're happy because they're Christian men. Like, they're Christian men, but let's be real. They don't go to church every Sunday the way that you do. Or they're not trying to go to 9 a.m. Bible study, like Sunday school before. Whatever it is that you do, they're willing to engage initially because they're like, thank you, God, for... It's like they're almost substituting your spirituality for theirs. Or they're living like vicariously through you spiritually.
That is not what's happening.
And then when it's sealed, when the deal is sealed, you start saying, well, this is not actually who you are.
And they don't even want to go to church.
Yeah, you're imposter.
No, and so for me, let me be real, before this interview is over, because you said spill the tea, so let's spill some real tea.
Spill some tea and I'm going to be quiet.
Spill some real tea.
I'm going to try to lap it up.
The guy that I am currently dating, we have been dating for a year. He lost his wife a year and a half ago. And we were so aligned spiritually. Like, I've never been with a man. I was married to a pastor for 35 years. And I've never read the Bible every day, did devotions every day, prayed the day in, prayed the day out, couldn't get off the phone with him about talking about God and loving it and digging into the scriptures. And then I recently went to church with him, back in March, because we live in different states. And he told me that he was a member of the Church of Christ. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what that meant. Now, let's be clear. It's different from the Church of God in Christ.
Yes,
that's different than the Church of Christ. And so I want to be as short as I can because it's a long subject. And that is, I feel like, and I said this and I was very honest with him, and that the Church of Christ has all of the dimensions and characteristics of a cult. Period. If you have all the dimensions, that's what you are. If a duck quacks, it's a duck. Period. And if you do waddle and quack and you go deep down and get fish, you're a duck.
So his religion and his spirituality is in alignment with yours, but his religion isn't.
Exactly.
And so what do you do with that? So this man wants to marry you. What you do with that?
Well, he gave me a ring in April.
So what you do with that?
And so now we are unengaged.
Because?
The problem is...
What's the problem?
Is that he was not honest.
Going back to honesty.
Because when I discovered, I went to that worship space and it was confining, and I felt like I was not only muzzled, but I was also chained. I really did feel like if I can't clap and I can't be demonstrative in my worship, then you're controlling me. And he said, well, why didn't you clap when you were there? I said, because I respect people's space.
But Dorothy, if he's devout to God and you understand that, like, why does his individual worship?
Because I will not be with a man that I'm not worshiping together. And I'm not going into
You mean corporate worship outside public worship?
No, I want us to be affiliated with the same church, period.
Okay.
And he, where I'm saying he was dishonest, is that he made me believe that we would find a place together.
I got it.
And then as it kept rolling,
he wouldn't leave.
Right, he said, I can't leave.
Wow.
Which is different than I won't leave.
Right. If you could speak to your younger self, if you could speak to 18, 20-year-old Dorothy, what would you tell her about dating, sex, and relationships?
I would say that celibacy is key. I really think that women give themselves away, and men give themselves away, and they have not learned who they are, nor learned who that other person is. And I really think, and I've been preaching this self-care thing deep, because we think going to get our nails done and our hair done is a self-care. No, that's an outwardly expression of who I am, but who you really are is in how to care for yourself, meaning being compassionate toward yourself, having your own values, and really aligning everything, what you do, what you say, who you affiliate with, has to align with your values. So get values. Know clear, if you know God, what is affiliated with that. What are the spiritual disciplines that you need in order to be true and honest to yourself and to God? That's what I would say.
Thank you for tuning in to Yoked by Love. And if you enjoyed today's episode, join me online to continue the conversation on Facebook or Instagram. You can find me at Ivy Jalise or at yokedbylove.com. Remember to subscribe, follow, and share. Until next time, stay blessed.